For better or worse, what is your most memorable remaster, remake, or reboot, and why is it so? Maybe it was so memorable because they captured the nostalgia of the original so well. Or maybe they found the perfect voice actor for your favorite character that originally only had text.
Tifa, we need to focus on saving Aerith.
Maybe it's the fact that over time, new technology was built that allowed the experience to be more immersive. Unfortunately, nostalgia is not always honored. And we don't always see the best portrayal of our favorite characters. And of course, technology doesn't always do us favors. Sometimes it just encourages laziness. Today, I want to look at examples of video games and maybe touch on film, where we can see beautiful examples of remasters honoring the nostalgia of the original. And where have we missed it? What has made remakes justifiable and not just unnecessary? And lastly, what makes a reboot even worth it and makes it more than just a money grab? If you have any thoughts along the way, please chime in the comments. I'm going to do my best to play a non-biased position, but it's going to be real hard because some of the things I'm going to talk about are very near and dear to my heart. I hope you understand. As we get started, I want to make it clear that my intention is to make this a timeless video, timeless research. But in order to do this right, we need to look back and we need to look forward. So that's going to put us on a little bit of a timeline. I'm going to look back at some things that have been done well, some things have been done poorly, and I'm going to look forward at where there might be possibilities to do more remasters, remakes, and reboots in a way that really honors the originals, and maybe talk about some ways that, hey, we probably just shouldn't touch that. One of the most important things that I think we need to keep in mind when we're visiting this topic is we are messing with and tampering with people's core memories. If you take something like Ninja Turtles, yeah, that was a cartoon, but it was very much a part of my reality. Depending on what you do with that, like, I'm going to have to correct my daughter's perspective of Michelangelo. And when it comes to like Final Fantasy, I just want my kids to have an experience that is as close to mine as possible. So if you change it too much, that's a miss. But if you don't change it enough, they're probably not likely to pick up a PlayStation 1 game where the dude just looked like he was right out of Minecraft, which is kind of ironic. I know most of us in here are probably gamers, but do me a favor. Let's look at basketball for just a moment. It's likely that you know who Steph Curry is. Why? Well, he's basically the god of three-pointers. What if I told you that the three-pointer didn't even exist in the NBA until 1979? That's right. A dude named Chris Ford in 1979 made the first three-pointer in NBA history. Think about this. In 1979, a line was drawn. Those who knew NBA with a three-pointer and those who knew the NBA without a three-pointer. Can you imagine being somebody who never shot a three-pointer? Your last season was 1978. You never even saw a three-pointer. Suddenly, the next year, you're watching a completely different game? That's crazy to think about. Now, imagine your first season being 1979, and all you ever knew was a three-pointer. And then, of course, you have the players that overlap both eras. They experienced the three-pointer, they experienced it without the three-pointer. It's going to be this constant debate of what is better, what is worse. I think it's safe to say that the three-pointer has been a better thing for the game overall. But that doesn't mean it wasn't extremely painful for those that were playing to adjust, and those that played before to watch and reminisce on the good old days. I would guess a lot of you didn't even know there was an NBA without the three-pointer. Now think about this. The NBA has been around for decades. There aren't weekly patch notes, there aren't buffs and nerfs.
In case y'all missed it earlier, I'm going to go over all of the buffed LeBron moves. LeBron got a buff to his neutral attack.
They rarely change the map, right? They adjust, they add a few things here and there, but you could go years and years and years without seeing any real significant changes to the game. Video games, we get new video games all the time. Changing basketball is a very big deal. So when we do it, there's a whole lot of people that come around and make a very, very big decision. You could argue sometimes those decisions are good and sometimes they're bad, but the bottom line is There's a whole lot at stake when you change the game of basketball. Unfortunately, the industry doesn't always see video games to the same degree they see basketball. Video games are a dime a dozen, a dime a thousand, a dime a million, right? They're everywhere. You change basketball, you change everything. You change one game, oh well, let's make another one. Now, I want to be careful here not to diss the artist, not to insult the artist. But that's the problem. A lot of times, these decisions for remasters, remakes, and reboots, it's not about art. It's about money. It's important that video game development is seen as an art form. I have a dear friend named Chris who runs a game development studio out of Oregon called SOMA Games. I bring up SOMA for two reasons. One, Chris is constantly talking about video game development as an art form. It's basically his life goal to help people understand that you can do things that are good, true, and beautiful and express those things through video game development. The second reason I mention this is because SOMA has had an opportunity to take nostalgic IPs and turn them into video games. For example, the book series known as Redwall. Redwall was about a little mouse who had a sword and did cool stabby things. SOMA had a huge responsibility to take this book series and turn it into a video game. Now, think about this. The age of the people that read these books are now adults who are gamers that probably have kids. Not only do they have to get this game right to honor those that read the books, but they have to get this game right for the kids of those people who are now going to read the books. This is a massive responsibility. If they don't get it right, they frustrate one generation and they miss out on an opportunity to really serve the next generation. And now you have pissed off parents and sad kids. Art is about expression and subjectivity and perspective and creative liberty. When we lose sight of that, it just feels stiff. It feels like we are literally just remaking this thing, remastering it, or rebooting it because we need another paycheck. People see that. They feel it. And we as gamers, we don't want any more of that. And this is where this video gets a little more personal. My favorite single-player childhood game is getting remastered, Suikoden. If you don't know what Suikoden is, I'll add a video in the description that'll tell you all about it, but I'll summarize. It's a classic JRPG style game, turn-based with attack and skills and spells, mixed with something like Pokemon, where you collect characters throughout the world. In games like Final Fantasy, you have a party of 3, and you might have the opportunity to play as 8, maybe 10 different characters throughout the game. The Suikoden series is all about collecting 108 playable characters. It also has an open world element, where you can explore the world and do some things at your own pace, namely recruiting playable characters. You can play through the main story of the game and collect a good chunk of characters. However, if you want to collect all 108, you're going to have to do some side quests. Once you complete a side quest for a specific character, that character will then join your entourage. And without too many spoilers, once you recruit them, let's just say they may or may not have an impact on the rest of the game. To keep this from being a Suikoden video and to keep it timeless, I need to remind you the reason I mention this is because I'm looking forward, but I'm also reminiscing on my nostalgia. This game carries so much nostalgia for me, down to my memory of first discovering it. I was walking through the store with my grandmother, and as most young people would do, or 36-year-old dads, I like to run straight to the toys or straight to the electronics. I was young enough to where she didn't want me to walk alone, so she came with me. And as we were heading to the video game section, I noticed an end cap. Like most stores, end caps will just have random things on them at times. It just so happened the end cap that I discovered had all greatest hits on it. Greatest hits were not remakes, they were not remasters, they were just new labels. They would sell the games at a lower price with a higher volume. Occasionally, I would browse through these racks and see if there were any greatest hits of games that I had heard about but not been able to afford when they first launched. As I was looking, I didn't find any greatest hits that I wanted to play, but I saw this. I said, "Grandma, how do you say this?" And she said something like Suikoden. Now I say Suikoden because I have a friend that knows Japanese, but most people say Suikoden. Not knowing the gold that was in my hands, I looked up at my grandma and I said, "Can I please get this?" And she said, "Sure, why not?" I came home, played the game, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I loved it. As I played through it, there was just enough challenge that I couldn't figure out how to beat certain bosses. I couldn't figure out how the inventory system worked, and I fell in love with the characters. There were tears of joy, tears of laughter, tears of sorrow. It had it all, and I fell in love with Suikoden. Over the next number of years, I beat the game several times, 100%ing it every time except for the first. As the years continued to move on, people talked about Final Fantasy, they talked about Crash Bandicoot, they talked about Star Fox on the 64, but I never heard anybody talk about this game called Suikoden. One day at school, I'm talking about the game that I called Suikoden, and someone said, "Do you mean Suikoden?" And I thought, what? You know what that is? Do you really say Suikoden?
Suikoden. 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 You sound like an American.
アメリカ人っぽいですね。
And we had this amazing conversation about who our favorite characters were, our favorite moments in the story, our favorite characters to use in combat or against certain bosses. It was amazing. And I realized this game had a massive cult following. Back to the point. I love this game. And down to its pronunciation, I have deeply rooted nostalgia. A week from the making of this video, I will be playing the remaster version of Suikoden 1 and Suikoden 2. And I am very particular about how I want to see this done. That may not be fair of me, but it's just true. I know they're going to make some changes. I know there might be some exploits that they got rid of. I know that there might be some jokes and some text that they changed for cultural relevance. However, this is not a remake, it's a remaster. So please, don't remake my favorite game. Just remaster it. And this brings me to my last point. When we're talking about a remaster, a remake, or a reboot, let's be very, very clear on what it is we're actually planning on doing with the game. One of the biggest cases of this that I can think of is Warcraft 3. When Blizzard made some decisions for Warcraft 3, they said, hey, we're going to remaster this game. People got excited. Are we going to have custom games? Yes, kind of. No. What's the UI going to look like? Different, but the same, but not really. Are the graphics going to be better? Yeah, outside of custom games, I wasn't a massive Warcraft 3 fan, so I can't really throw Blizzard under the bus for too much. But what I do know is when this remaster came out, Reforged, people were pretty upset. Primarily because they didn't deliver in the ways they said they would. You might be thinking, Seafools, they're not going to mess up Suikoden. It's just a remaster. It's been done before, it can be done again. When we are remastering, remaking, or reworking, let's focus on doing just that. As we look back, we know that all three of these things have been done incorrectly at times. As we look forward, we know that there are a lot of things that really could use a remaster. Maybe they need to be rebooted. Maybe it needs to be remade a little bit. But we also know that there are some things that just don't need to change. Because of the way I'm wired, I love connecting video games to life. In my life, there are probably some things that I should change. There are also some things that I shouldn't change. And there's a number of things that are debatable. Subjectivity is a beautiful thing. Some think I ought to be more generous, some think I need more rest, others might say I need to work harder. I'm not really sure, but that's up to me. As we look at life and we look at video games, it would do us all a great service to think about what is objectively true and what is subjective. Where might our opinion of what the best video game is just be a really strong opinion? And where might a bad feature in a game actually be a bad feature? The more a game developer treats it like art, and the more we as consumers treat it like art, the more grace we have for one another. Oh, they took some creative liberty here on the UI. Well, it's not what I would have done, but good on them for taking some creative liberty as the artist. Video game development is an art form. The more we see it that way, the more we honor nostalgia, the more respect we have for the developers who are creating entertainment for us, and the less we make it about money. And quite frankly, the more money I'm willing to spend on it. In closing, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I'd like to thank you for pondering these things and sharing your thoughts in the comments. For me, this video is about art. I hope that it brought you some value, and I hope because of that, you end up clicking the like button. Maybe subscribing and clicking the bell so you can see more things that hopefully bring you more value. If you're watching this before March 6th of 2025, I'd love to invite you to join us for the live stream next week as we play through Suikoden HD Remaster. And if you're watching this years later, the VOD will be up. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.